Okay. I'm hoping they're going to get warmed up by learning Torah. Rav Shimon, מה השם של הרב שמלמד?
I have no idea.
Okay. Let's start. You ready? At the end of chapter 17 of the book of Samuel, that's right, chapter 17, Yud Zayin 17. This is the chapter numbers. There you go. Tov, David outwits, sharpshoots, kills this big monster called Goliath. And that should be the reward for him to remove the cherpa, to remove the shame that this ugly person has been cursing the army of God, the God of Israel. And he, with one slingshot, hits him exactly in the forehead. He falls not back, but miraculously apparently falls forward. Some explain Chazal to save David of walking such a lengthy walk because he's so gigantic. But the others say to have his face and his mouth buried in the dirt because he used his mouth for such foul language and such terrible things. David brings the head after he cuts off the head of Goliath. That's correct. David does not abide by the Geneva Convention. He cuts off his head because the head of the Plishti deserves to be cut off. If he's using his divine image, the Tzelem Elokim, for wrong things, then he doesn't deserve to have a head anymore. This caused the Plishtim camp tremendous fear. They retreated. Some of the Israeli soldiers were infused with courage, with spirit, and they begin hot pursuit. The Plishtim go back to their areas of Ekron, Gat, Sha'arim, we saw Sha'arayim, and apparently only until there do we go run after them. They come back. There's plenty of booty in the tents of the Plishtim camp. The soldiers are depicted here as taking the booty. Someone is not noted, and that's David. We asked, well, don't you want to go and take an MP3? Take a washing machine or a dryer? Okay? But David is not interested. He has something more precious in his booty, and that is the head of Goliath, the Plishti. And we see that David goes to Yerushalayim. First time Yerushalayim as a holy entity is mentioned in these writings. And some explain that he brings it into the 10th of the temporary tabernacle that we have in Yerushalayim. But like one of you said, it may have a Mizbeach there, but it doesn't have the Aron HaKodesh. The Aron HaKodesh is still somewhere in Kiryat Yearim in the corridor of Yerushalayim. And then we learn about a flashback. The last four verses of this chapter. What verses are they? Nun Hey 55, Nun Vav 56, Nun Zayin, and Nun Chet 57 and 58. Something awkward happens, and that is Shaul, when he sees David going out to the war, he asks his defense minister of the army, the chief of staff, Ben mi ze hanar Avner? Who is this kid? The son of who? And Avner says, I don't know. He even takes an oath in God's name. And we asked ourselves, what do you mean he doesn't know? Put on your spectacles and see, isn't that David, the one that came and played musical instruments to make you happy? Isn't that David that you see, he's a man of such great character, You're so fond of him, you have so much love and affection for him that you made him your arms bearer? Isn't that David that you sent him home now before the war, but otherwise he's been living by you? So you know what? Maybe you can't see. When he went out to the war against Goliath one-on-one, isn't that him that you ridiculed him? Maybe you're young, you're inexperienced. And then David convinced Shaul that David has had military experience killing who? A lion and a bear and a dove, Aryeh and a dove. And when David says it's God that gave him this power, okay, go and may God be with you. Don't you remember this is David? We don't understand what's going on. And what kind of question is Ben Mi Zehanar? When he went out to war against Goliath, you asked, this kid, who's the son of who? So maybe one answer is he can't see at the distance. Maybe, could be. Can't see. But why is he asking who's the son of who? He wants to know about the lineage? I know. One of the commentators indeed says, what is the prize that Saul offered for someone that fights? His daughter. In other words, David stands to be his future son-in-law. Khatan. He'll be his Khatan. Khatan is son-in-law. He wants to know, what is his yichus? What is his lineage? Who's his father? Who's his grandfather? That could very well be one answer. Another answer, and therefore he's a little nervous, wants to know how good he is. But you said yesterday, I hope you remember, when we brought Chazal, Rashi brought it as well. Our sages in the Gemara, Mesechet Sanhedrin, that he really wants to know, he's afraid that after he combated and won over Goliath, maybe he's the one replacing me. Do you remember? Clandestinely, secretly, David has been anointed as the future king. At the same time, whose kingdom was ripped up by the prophet Shmuel? The kingdom of Saul. We have two people that are or were kings, and none of them is basically ruling the country. Maybe he suspects he's ruling. Furthermore, he's asking, does he come from a royal potential? Is he from the family of Peretz? You know who Peretz is? Or is he not from the family of Peretz, meaning he's not fit for royalty, and he comes from the family of Zerach? And then, who interferes? Mr. Troublemaker. There's a person with the letter Dalid called Doeg Ha'adomi. Don't worry. Doeg, let Doeg worry. You're supposed to laugh. The word Doeg is to be worrying. Doeg says, until you ask what family comes from, is he at all worthy to become king? Maybe he's not worthy because his ancestor called Mrs. Ruth, her marriage to Boaz is illegitimate. Because Ruth stems from which country, which nation? Moab. And doesn't the Torah say, Lo yavo Amoni uMoavi b'kahal Hashem? And he's thinking that she can't, even if she does gior, she can't marry a regular Israelite. Then Avner, the Gemara says, interfered, the minister of the army. And he says, we learned in the Talmud, even though the Talmud wasn't written, I'm adding, a Moani and not an Ammonite. A Moavi man and not a Moavite woman. Meaning, a Moavite woman that does gior is allowed to marry a regular Israelite or a Levi. And Ruth was married by Boaz from the tribe of Yehuda. It's a legitimate marriage. That's what Avner, the minister of the army, intervenes. And then Doeg says, if that's the case, maybe the pasuk regarding a mamzer, Do you know what a mamzer is?
Yes, legitimate child.
A child born out of a karet prohibition relationship, right? There are illegitimate marriages that are just a lav, a mitzvat lo taseh. The product of a lav marriage, mitzvat lo taseh, is not a mamzer. But the prohibited, the arayot, the gilui arayot, all the laws of adultery, the women that we're not allowed to marry, our family members and this and that, a married woman, a nida, so and so. So the product of a karet prohibition relationship, you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Karet, to be cut off, that is a mamzer. That is a mamzer. So comes Doeg and says, really? That's how you interpret the pasuk, Lo yavo amoni or moavi b'kal Hashem? So maybe you should say the same thing regarding mamzer. What does it say about mamzer? Lo yavo mamzer b'kal Hashem. So maybe you should darshan out, a mamzer cannot enter, but a mamzeret, like you interpreted a Moavi and a Moavite woman and a Ammoni woman, maybe she can. Avner answered that question as well. And then Avner was shut up by another claim of Doeg Adumi. When he's being shut up, Shaul is worried, Ben Mizeh. Is he really fit for royalty? Maybe he's not fit for royalty. In other words, what's bothering Shaul right now is that maybe David is not fit for royalty. And he saw something very weird happening. When David wore the uniform, the clothing of the king to go out to war, something surprised him. What surprised him? That the uniform, as if it shrunk, fit the size of David, even though Shaul is way, way taller than him. My dear friends, this question, Ben Mizeh Anar, Shaul is having stormy emotions right now. He senses his kingdom or his position as king is crumbling. And he's not sure about the identity of David. If on the one hand, his position as king crumbles, is it David that's going to be taking over? Furthermore, the matter here is not just a halachic matter that Doeg is bringing here. It's not just this matter. My friends, do you notice that Avner goes and asks the question? Or do you notice that Avner doesn't even ask the question whatsoever? I want to tell you something. Another general called Amasa. We'll learn about him later. Okay? When Amasa hears that people are bad-mouthing David, he takes his sword, the Gemara says, and he says, anyone that doesn't listen to this halacha regarding a Moabite woman that she can marry, he will be killed by the sword, because this halacha, established by Boaz several generations ago, and reestablished by Samuel the prophet, right now, it's an Ammoni man that cannot marry into the congregation of God, but an Ammoni woman can, a Moavi man cannot, a Moabite woman can. Maybe that's the reason why Avner doesn't go ahead and bother asking the question. Because it's a clear-cut halacha. It's true. The marriage of Ruth to Boaz was legitimate. And therefore the offspring a few generations later, David, is legitimate. Now, the situation is not still good. Because in Nun Vav, in 56, what appears for the first time in a long time? Hamelech. It didn't appear in a while. And here he's called Hamelech. Why? Why is he here called Hamelech? The answer perhaps is, Rav Bachrach says, I want you to picture the situation right now. Shaul feels emotionally and mentally as if he is losing it. Now, I want to ask you something. Maybe he's mustering up some koach to act as a king. Now let me ask you something. The war is over right now? Yes or no? The war, no, why not? The Plishtim have retreated.
The battle is over.
In the battle, they've retreated. What do you think should be the reaction after David cuts off the head of the Plishtim? What should be the reaction? Say it. What?
Good job.
What else? Not only praise, what?
No.
Applause. What else? Where's the beer? Let's drink a l'chaim. Let's make a what? Thanksgiving to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What is the situation here? No applauding, no appraising, no beer, nothing. Gentlemen, we would have thought that people would be cheering, applauding, shkoyach, wow, David, you're great, and show appreciation to this Na'ar that he in his own hands outwitted and shot down. But where are the people? Where are they? I know what. Maybe they're still running after the Plishtim. But don't they deserve to come back and say to David, Chazak u'varuch, shakoach? My dear friends, Shaul himself, do you remember when he finished the war against the Plishtim, although he did take Agag as a POW, a prisoner of war, he went straight to Gilgal, and there was a Mizbeach there, and what did he do? He offered korbanot in Gilgal, okay? And here, we don't see building a Mizbeach right now, saying thank you to Hashem, but you know who's mentally tired? After 40 days of seeing the lack of activity by the side of Israel, he is mentally tired, Shaul. He's very tired. And by the way, in Pasuk Nun Zayin, does it tell you who ordered David to come before Shaul? Did Shaul ask to bring him? No. When David returned from hitting the Plishti, Avner takes him and brings him before Shaul with the head of the Plishti here. It's unclear why Avner is bringing him. It's unclear why Shaul didn't ask to bring him. And it's unclear, why is he being taken by Avner? Shouldn't David come by himself and report? Here's the evidence. Here's what I did. Gentlemen, do you understand why David doesn't want to come? Do you know what what do you think David's afraid of?
Afraid of not receiving a prize, but punishment.
I think he's afraid of an encounter with Shaul. He's been trying to prevent it all the time. And to his misfortune, he thinks he's playing his instruments. He's his arm bearer. He wanted to avoid meeting with Shaul, because he knows that he's anointed as the next king, and Shaul doesn't even know it. He wants to prevent it. So maybe I understand why David didn't want to go by himself to Shaul and show, this is what I did. Avner brings him. Yet no one says, Shkoyach, well done. Rather, the last pasuk of our chapter is what? Vayomer elav Shaul, ben mi ata hana'ar. Could it be that Shaul, his mind is closed, and all he's thinking of, maybe he's the next king, maybe he's my future son-in-law, but no, he's like frozen. He can't say, well done, Yeshakot. Not even that. We don't even see. Now let me ask you something. Before David responds, and he says who he is, who, on the side of Israel, has shown courage, no fear to the enemy, is willing to do things day in and day out to uplift the courage of Israel? The son of Shaul, Yonatan. Yonatan was the one that took his arm barrier, didn't tell his father anything, went under Michmash, outwitted the Plishtim, and caused them to run away. A one-man war. A one-man war. How much do you think Yonatan respects David? What do they share? What do they both have?
Courage.
Unlimited courage. Belief, tremendous belief and trust in God. Let me ask you something. Who do you think who thinks? Does Yonatan know that his father's kingdom was torn up? Probably not. Does he know that David was anointed as king? Probably not. Who do you think stands to be the next king?
You don't know.
Why? He's the son. He should be the, what is it called, the heir? The heir of the kingdom of King Saul. Now, I would assume, who's at the base over here? Yonatan. He sees what David did. He sees that he's not awarded, he's not prized, no one's taking out some beers and drinking a l'chaim, no one's doing anything. Do you think he senses the insult? I mean, if you were the most courageous person in the Israeli army and you won the war, so to speak, you're expecting some sort of celebration. Well done, Yishar Koach. We'll give you another stripe on your shoulder, right? My dear friends, I'm trying to think, Rabbi is asking, what do you think is going on in Yonatan's heart right now? That David doesn't even get a good word, nothing. All Shaul does is a second time ask, Ben mi ata hana'ar. For a second time he asks him, okay? Not one word of, well done, you deserve a lot of things, you saved the honor of the Jewish people, you saved the honor of the army of God. Instead of this, he asks a very cold question. A very cold question, as if he has no hakarata tov to him. It could be that already Shaul is very saddened. He has a bad spirit of jealousy on him, and it's as if he has no control of his mouth. All he asks is, who are you? Who's your lineage? He's maybe predisposition of thinking that he's going to be my son-in-law. Will he be the next king or not? What does David answer? Vayomer David, the last phrase of the chapter, Ben Avdecha Yishai Beit Halachmi. Wow. Is David full of self-pride? Is David full of haughtiness? I should get a pension plan. I should get a Volvo. I should get servants. He calls himself Ben Avdecha Yishai. Not only am I your servant, I'm the son of your servant Yishai. My father's your servant. We come from a family of people that are humble, humbling ourselves, lowering ourselves, submitting ourselves. Do you see this? Wow. Yishai Beit Halachmi. And this, we see, our dear friends, how the chapter ends. Questions or comments? Is what? Yes. Beautiful. Okay. I want to relate to the point that this man makes, and then David will get to your question. My dear friends, the Malbim explains that ever since David offered himself to go fight against Goliath, a new spirit clothed him, the spirit of godliness, the spirit of courage, and it had the mental change in David, willing to fight against Goliath, against all the odds. It even changed his facial appearance. To the effect, here's a new understanding that Shaul doesn't even recognize him. The opposite's happening to Shaul. He's full of the Ruach Ra'ah, and he's full of jealousy, and he's full of and thinking that he's afraid that David's going to take his position away. And the truth is, the Malbim says that the spirit of courage and godliness on David's face had a change in his facial appearance, to the extent that even Shaul didn't understand that. Yes. So that's a new meaning by the Malbim.
Why are they so concerned that his father's side, Ruth, is from his father's side?
He's afraid that David's going to take over and be the next king, and maybe he comes from an invalid, illegitimate wedding relationship a few generations ago with the conversion of Ruth and marriage to Boaz. And right now he's going to be asked. He offered a prize. Whoever goes to fight against Goliath will become married to my daughter.
Why does that matter? He's not a Cohen, so it doesn't matter that.
Because he's afraid that David's going to take over to be the king. In order to be the king, you must come from the kosher lineage of the house of David, house of Judah. Which house of Judah? Peretz. Remember? Yehuda and Tamar had twin children, Peretz and Zerach. Which of the two will be earmarked for the kingdom? Peretz. Do you sing the Shabbat song on Lecha Dodi?
Yeah, but I don't know.
So you got to read and understand it. What does Rabbi Shlomo Alkavetz talk about Peretz? Ben Partzi. We're waiting for the coming of the Messiah from the family of Peretz, as we see in the Lecha Dodi. Yes, second question.
Relations with Nida women, is it correct? As I've learned, this also is even applying to those, say unmarried couple, but who try to circumvent the laws by saying she goes to mikvah and it's all good. So, as such, if they conceive a child before they're married, is that child now considered mamzer based on what this was being said?
If the woman was truly a nida, then the child is a mamzer.
Are we going more literally that she was actually nida on a period, or are we going with the kind of decree from?
She will be. It's a karet. Yeah, in Isur karet. Nida's karet.
It's one of the 9 types. But it's not correct.
9 what?
There's the 9 types, but it's
I'll show you later. I hope to show you later. I think so.
A daughter of Nida?
Sure. A woman who's a nida has a karet prohibition. I'll show you the parsha. We'll talk about this. Not the subject now. I'll show. We'll finish this sure in a few minutes. Now I want to go to, and we'll look it up. Okay, we'll look it up.
One of the 9 types.
We'll open it up and see. We'll open it up and see. We're at the end of the chapter, and now the Tanakh begins. Chapter 18. Vayi ki chaloto ledaber el Shaul. David's name is not even mentioned. When he finishes speaking to Shaul, we're told what's going on in the mind, in the soul of Yonatan. It says, "V'nefesh Yonatan nikshara b'nefesh David." Wow. Vayaveu Yehonatan kenafsho. Gentlemen, some of us were looking for Yonatan these last 40 days. I heard once a commentary, Rabbi Bienenfeld, I think, brought that once that Yonatan every day wanted to go out and fight, and Shaul stopped him. You've heard of that commentary?
No, but
Shaul stopped him. He's afraid, God forbid, he'll die and he has to be the next king. That's what he's thinking. We don't hear, nothing in the Tanakh is mentioned. Remember, the son of the king is so courageous, is so fearful. Remember, only 2 people had swords in the Israeli camp now. Who were they? Shaul and Yonatan. And we know that Yonatan is a tzaddik, and he has amazing trust. Remember when he went with his bear carrier, he says, God, nothing can prevent God from saving us if we have a few people or a lot of people. So why don't we see him going up? Why doesn't he? So maybe he was prevented, because he showed tremendous courage, right? Tremendous courage. So he has to be here in the area, and he's watching everything. And he sees each and every morning this Goliath gets up early and prepares himself for war. And probably he's praying Yonatan and hoping someone's going to come, and no one comes out. He must be sad in this entire 40-day period. Then he understands that something great maybe has to happen. And here, David shows up after 40 days. And do you remember Vayar ki ein ish on the parsha, when Moshe was looking out to see is anyone looking, okay? He was looking, one of the midrashim say, not only was he looking, is anyone going to tattletale on me? He was looking to see, the midrash says, is there anyone here that will be zealous of the name of God and do what they have to do? And here we learn, wow, the soul of Yonatan is so connected to David. They're like one entity. They represent the courage of Israel. They represent the greatness of the Jewish people. And do you notice the additional letter? All of a sudden, he's no longer called Yonatan, but rather he's called? Why? What is the letter Hey doing?
It's a resemblance of Hashem's name.
Beautiful. We have the Yud, and then the Hey, and then even above, 3 of 4 letters of God's name. So here, we see that he senses the greatness. And because David is so great and Yonatan appreciates him, it could be that Yonatan, he doesn't know that David's about to be the next king, but he could be willing to give up any rights that he has to the next kingdom and give it to David. This, there are different types of loves. There are loves that are dependent upon something superficial, something external. But there's an ideal connection or relationship of love and admiration that's pnimi, that's intrinsic, that's internal. Yonatan respects, admires the soul of David on such a level that it's not dependent upon, if David does something good for me or does something bad to my father, it won't make a difference. It's a love and appreciation because of who David is and what David has done. And therefore it says that David loves him like he loves himself. Okay? Wow. Let's continue reading Pasuk Bet. Vayikacheu Shaul bayom hahu, v'lo netano lashuv el beito. Wow. Here it is. Now David is in trouble. He might think, I have to live here all the time by who? By Shaul's house. And I can't go back. I have to be ready. Now, one of the reasons he has to be ready, because it could be that Shaul is saddened. Mentally and emotionally he's going to be saddened. And David is the only one that has the ability through musical playing to uplift his spirits. But in the meantime, in the background, we see that Yonatan is willing to acquiesce, to give up things on behalf of David. Pasuk Gimel. Vayichrot Yehonatan v'David Brit. Be'havato oto kinafsho. Do you understand who's initiating this agreement? Do you understand who's going forward? Who's maybe even acquiescing his ability to become the next king? It says Vayichrot. If it would have been both of them, one to the other, what would be written? Vayichretu. And they. But in verse 3, the first word Vayichrot, it's clear that David is totally passive. He doesn't understand how to accept the admiration, the love of the son of the king. He knows that Shaul is in bad spirits and bad times. Maybe he's a little, how shall we call it, reserved to accept this relationship of admiration and love, and I'm going to do for you, you're going to do for me, because maybe it'll give trouble to the father. So we would have thought it would have said Vayichrot Yonatan le David, but it doesn't say that. It doesn't say that. Rather, Yonatan, who certainly wants the Brit to be mutual on the side of David, but here we see that Yonatan is ready to give. That's unusual. If you're the son of royalty, you think maybe things are coming to you. Like you said, you're going to bequeath, you'll inherit. But here we see that Yonatan is ready to give. Okay? In Pirkei Avot, some of you remember the Mishnah? What is the love that's not dependent upon something? Okay? It's the love that's for David and Yonatan. So, there, the commentaries explain the will or desire of God is the will and desire of David and Yonatan. It's a spiritual love. It's based upon ideals and values. And here, Yonatan is the giver. He is the initiator. What does he do? Pasuk Dalet. Vayitpashet Yonatan et ha'me'il asher alav. What do you mean? Litpashet is to spread out, isn't it? And here it says, Vayitpashet Yonatan et ha'me'il asher alav vayitneu leDavid. Umadav vad chabo vad kashto v'cho. He's giving him everything. Gentlemen, when you spiritually want to give of yourself to God, you're like spiritually undressing yourself, taking everything you have and giving it to God. The meaning here of Vayitpashet Yonatan et David, we're talking about you're giving of yourself. And it has expression in the physical world. You're giving him your cloak, you're giving him your cherev, your keshet, and your chagor. Okay? Your belt. So here we see the appearance of a very idealistic person, Yehonatan. It says again Yonatan with the letter A. He is supporting David. It could be that he doesn't know yet. They haven't spoken that he is the anointed king. Right now we didn't see it. But right now, he's like, if you use the word vayit pashet, not only to spread out, but to undress yourself, do you understand symbolically what he's giving? He's giving the future kingdom to David. He's like undressing himself, as if, okay, metaphorically, and giving his, so to speak, royal clothing to David. That's amazing. That's such a tzaddik.